in the early days of HLTA, we did some surveys with the HLTAs to find out what the impact of HLTA was. And nationally, one of the biggest impacts of gaining HLTA was a rise in self-esteem of the actual HLTA themselves, because they'd reflected so strongly upon their work, and also, in talking to their mentor, their school teacher, their colleagues or their head teacher, seeing it in writing and seeing it in a document folder and really thinking about it really made people very much aware of, yeah, this person does a great job day in, day out. To gain HLTA, you have to demonstrate that you do have the ability to advance learning in whole class situations with no teacher present, and you have to prove that you've done this on 3 or more occasions. What year did HLTA start? When was the first HLTA status awarded in England? 2003 is a pilot, and 2004 national rollout, and that was the year I started, and it all tied in with workforce reform. Until that date, there was no such thing as PPA cover in primary schools. Okay, so my next question is this: what year did the funding stop? There was a point when the TDA and the government said, okay, we're no longer going to give money towards this. From now on, schools and individuals will have to pay themselves if they wish to be an HLTA. Well, the answer is the funding stopped completely in 2012. So from 2004 to 2012, there were we had regional providers of assessment who had the contract with the TDA to assess all HLTAs. The question is, how many HLTAs were there in England in 2012 when the funding stopped? And the answer to that question is 45,000. There were 45,000 HLTAs in England in 2012 when the funding stopped. And at that point we thought, okay, what's going to happen next? And actually, incidentally, when we started in 2004, the government did set us a target of getting 45,000 within 5 years. So that was never achieved, but that was a very ambitious target, I think. And I think it was fantastic that we did get 45,000 by 2012. So at that point, we didn't know what was going to happen. We didn't know if HLTA would die a death. We didn't know if schools would still value it, if schools would pay for it, if individuals would. But what happened was this, and I explain who I am and where I come from. I work for Best Practice Network, and we held a contract with the TDA to assess every HLTA in the South West and the West Midlands. And we got together with 4 other partners, and we formed what is now known as the HLTA National Assessment Partnership. And our commitment was that anybody who came to us for assessment post-2012 could be guaranteed that they would be prepared and assessed in exactly the same way as the first 45,000. And we know very much that since the regulations changed, the TJ no longer exists, that there are companies, colleges, organisations out there who do offer HLTA. Any organisation can set up and train, prepare and assess people against HLTA. We know there are organisations who offer HLTA and perhaps offer it at a cheaper rate, and that's their entitlement to do that. But we felt that we wanted to offer schools and individuals a chance of pure continuation to say, look, if you apply through HNAP, the HLTA National Assessment Partnership, if you come through one of our partners, we can guarantee you that you will be prepared and assessed in exactly the same way. So a certificate from us is recognised nationally and has that rigour because we cross-moderate across all the regions. Anyway, we weren't quite sure how many people would still come to us. So next question to you, if there were 45,000 between 2004 and 2012, and then the funding stopped, how many individuals have since gone and been assessed by HNAP, by the organisation that I work with and for, since 2012? And we've now got just over 52,000 HLTAs in the country. And I think I'm right in saying there are about 235,000 full-time equivalent TAs working in schools, so of which 52,000 have gained HLTA status. Of course, not all those HLTAs are deployed as HLTAs, we know that. Indeed, not everyone who has a HLTA role has actually gained the status. If you want some more information about HNAP, if you don't know who we are, who your regional provider of assessment is, we do have a website which is www.hlta.org.uk. On that website it says 6,500 HLTAs assessed by HNAP since 2012, that now, because of the last 2 months of moderation, can be updated to just over 7,000. That it is down to the school to decide what people are fit and proper to lead, to do specified work. where specified work is about planning and delivering lessons. But it does say that schools should take into regard professional standards such as HLTA standards. I guess my view and belief is that if a school looked at the HLTA standards, looked at 33 standards and felt that an individual was meeting those standards, they could call them an HLTA and deploy them in an HLTA role, because there's no government statute which says you have to go through HNAP or any other organisation to be externally verified as an HLTA. What we've found is that the majority of schools do want their HLTAs to have that external verification, to have that 3-hour school visit from an external assessor, so they know that what is an HLTA, considered an HLTA in Cheshire is the same as York, is the same as London, is the same as Bristol, etc. In case you're interested in HLTA, last year our colleagues at ELC set up with Gateway Qualifications a very new Level 4 certificate for HLTAs. It's the first that we're aware of, and it was organised, it's 24 credits at Level 4 on the qualifications framework, so it's an actual qualification. But if you are interested in finding out more about the Level 4 certificate for HLTAs, which is a brand new qualification, 24 credits at Level 4, our particular website is www.bestpracticenet.co.uk/HLTA. I think we had 2 years ago, numbers were down a bit, and you know, we were a bit concerned about the numbers. But in the last 2 years, they've really picked up. And I think for schools, it's that balance between paying what to us would be £800 or roughly that, because to gain HLTA through Best Practice Network as part of HNAP, I can't speak for all our partners in other regions, but we charge £290 plus VAT for the preparation, and then it's £450 for the assessment fee. And the £450 assessment fee is set nationally, so any part of the country, if you went through HNAP, it would cost you £450 to do the assessment on top of what you'd pay for the preparation, which does vary regionally depending on the provider. But schools seem to be this year in particular, until the end of last year, realising that actually what they pay for an HLTA, they would save a dozen times over in terms of using HLTAs to cover lessons rather than using supply teachers. Your job role, being a TA, being a classroom-based member of support staff at a school, is what do you need to do the job that you're asked to do. You know, you've got your level 2 qualification, your level 3 qualification. If an opportunity exists to be deployed or employed or to gain more money as an HLTA, then gain the status enables you to do that, and you don't need to get a foundation degree. But however, in terms of professional development and your own learning, I mean, we you know, we're all lifelong learners, aren't we? We encourage children to keep on learning, and the foundation degree can be a good step towards a full degree, which might take you towards a teaching qualification as well. And again, you know, up to 2012, the government were quite insistent schools shouldn't do that. Schools, if you were using someone as an HLTA, that person was required to go and gain the status. But because the funding stopped in 2012 and the regulations changed, that requirement that individuals who carry out whole class teaching, for example, or do specified work, you know, it's not the case that you have to get HLTA status. All I can say from my experience is that so many individuals want to gain the status, and so many schools, you know, 7,000 plus now since 2012, have shown a commitment to saying, you know, if we're using our people as HLTAs, we want to support them by getting that external verification. You know, the problem with certificates is because they are certificates, it costs money. So our level 4 certificate for higher level teaching assistants is an off-qual approved on the QCF qualifications framework. The cost, we've got an introductory cost of £395, normally it'd be £450. It's £395 for the first 50 HLTAs who take it up, because we're just launching it this term. And that's the big question, you know, will individuals pay for it? Can they afford to pay for it? What are the benefits to them of doing it? Or will schools pay? And I think that question hasn't yet been answered. We're waiting to see. I think, you know, I would encourage all HLTAs who are interested in getting it to ask the school that question. It's all about professional development. I think at the end of the day, for schools, it's about looking at your school action plan. What are the needs of the school, and does that include training for support staff? If you go back to the DIS report in 2009, Peter Blatchford et al., which was quite, well, it was represented in the press as being quite negative. It wasn't in reality. The press picked up on this idea in 2009 that TAs were having this negative effect on children in schools. If you read the DIS report, the Deployment and Impact of Support Staff, say Blatchford et al. 2009, if you actually read it, what it said is that teaching assistants who are well trained and well deployed can have a positive effect. But where they are not well trained and not well deployed, then they don't have a positive effect, which isn't too surprising really. And the issue with schools was that it was felt that many schools weren't ensuring that their TAs were properly trained or were properly deployed. So in terms of training, the question that all schools need to ask is, if we take all our TAs and HLTAs together, are they sufficient to do? And if not, then training should be supported. And if that comes at a cost, then ideally schools would pay that cost to get them trained to enable them to do the best possible job they can. In terms of deployment, it was that idea that came across that, generally across the country, TAs were used predominantly by schools to go and work with the most vulnerable or the least able children, those who needed the most support. And the argument is, or was, that the children with most need should be taught and supported by the teachers who had that level of qualification. And I think schools have made a lot of progress since then on trying to redress that. So not always saying to the TAs, go and work with the lower ability groups, but really sharing it around now and sort of sharing expertise and making sure that if that does happen, for example, if a TA is working with children with speech and language communication needs, that maybe they are ELCLN trained or trained in speech and language. So I think schools have done a really good job in recent years. If you've not seen it, there's a fantastic website called Maximising TAs. It's called the MITRE Project. Maximising the practice of teaching assistants and maximising the impact of teaching assistants. There's a really big drive, Rob Webster and Sharples and things, these people who've done a lot of work over a number of years. And maximisingtas.co.uk is a really, really useful website to look at if you want to look at deployment. And another website is the Education Endowment Foundation, because quite recently the Education Endowment Foundation, on their website, they published a TA guidance report, which was written by Jonathan Sharples, Rob Webster and Peter Blatchford, called Making Best Use of Teaching Assistants. And within that document, they come up with 7 recommendations. 5 is use TAs to deliver high quality one-to-one, standard 29, and small group support, standard 30, using structured interventions. And the key there is that if you are working one-to-one, if you are working with small groups, you should be using structured interventions that have been proven to work, which is what the next one is 6, adopt evidence-based interventions to support TAs in their small group and one-to-one instruction. And 7, ensure explicit connections are made between learning from everyday classroom teaching and structured interventions. So as a TA, there is clear guidance coming out now about what we believe works best. And I say, if that's of interest to you, that's called the TA Guidance Report. And it's available on the Education Endowment Foundation website, Making Best Use of Teaching Assistants Guidance Report. Teaching Assistant Standards. Public Service Union Unison, the National Association of Head Teachers, NAHT, the National Education Trust, and Maximising Teaching Assistants have published a set of professional standards for teaching assistants. I was talking about the TA standards. The previous coalition government set up a working party to come up with some professional standards for teaching assistants. And they did. They came up with a set that encompassed a whole wide range of professional attributes, teaching and learning, working in partnership, etc. And we thought they were really good standards. And then Nicky Morgan, the Secretary of State for Education at the time, after the election, said no, we're not going to publish them. So in some ways they were buried, and lots of people were very disappointed that a lot of hard work had gone into these standards, but they weren't published. The NAHT, Unison, the MITRE Project, and NET got together and approached the government and said, look, we feel there's a lot of value in these professional standards for TAs, and we feel we'd like to publish them. And the government said, yes, you have permission to publish them, which they did in June 2016, but they said, you must make it clear that they're non-statutory, they're non-mandatory, but, if you wish to publish them and say these were put together, then that's entirely down to you. Professional standards for TAs do not replace the standards for higher level teaching assistants, they complement them. So it's not a case of saying that HLTA no longer exists. Those HLTA standards are no longer relevant. They are absolutely relevant. The generic teaching assistant standards are for everybody. They have 4 themes: personal and professional conduct, knowledge and understanding, teaching and learning, and working with others. But as I say, HLTA complement this, and the HLTA standards that we use for our assessments still have a lot of value and a lot of place in the school system. And incidentally, at my company Best Practice Network, myself and a colleague Maureen, over the summer, once these were launched in June, in fact before that, we set about doing a TA diagnostic. So we've now produced a diagnostic that schools can use, whereby teaching assistants and or line managers can have access to an online provision, and basically each of the standards pops up and you choose emerging, securing, mastering, etc. 4 different levels with some grade descriptors of what each standard would look like at the 4 gradations. So you as a TA or your line manager could, your line manager could evaluate where you are against each of the standards, and a report is produced. Clear message here from the government: these are not mandatory, they're not statutory. Schools are not required to use them, but some schools may choose to. All the research shows that well-trained and well-deployed TAs have a positive impact on pupil well-being, pupil performance, pupil improvement, pupil independence, pupil confidence. It's all about being well-trained and well-deployed. Those 7 recommendations are a good starting point for how schools should deploy support staff effectively. In terms of training, it's about needs analysis. It's okay knowing a benchmark. Well, where are the TAs? Where do they sit in terms of all of these professional standards for TAs, for example, and therefore where are the gaps? And if a foundation degree helps you to become secure in each of the standards, then a foundation degree could help your professional development. If gaining the status helps you to close some gaps, but I would stress the preparation isn't about training. We do expect you, if you're going for HLTA status, you should already be at the point where you believe you're meeting the standards. But how do you know that? It's about looking at the standards and looking at the HLTA standards, and perhaps looking at the professional standards for TAs and identifying where your strengths are and areas you might wish to improve on. And if you do, well, how can you achieve that? Is it observing other teachers? Is it being observed? Is it changing year group for some time and working with different children or different cohorts or different types of need, and extending your knowledge? If you're an HLTA, we also have a programme called Leadership Development. It's an ILM, the Institute of Leadership and Management. We know that if there are 52,000 HLTAs in the country, a lot of HLTAs have a role in leading a subject area, leading a theme at school, or leading other people, being line manager, for example, particularly in secondary schools. So we have a programme which is an ILM Level 5 award in leadership. And in the past, we tried to run it where individuals would apply to us and we'd put on training events in hotels, etc. This is a very changing world now. HLTA and the Level 5 and all the foundations work we do, we no longer seem to be going down the direction of putting together our own cohorts and delivering in hotels and training venues. It's very much Teaching School Alliance led. So there's been a real surge now in us delivering HLTA with Teaching School Alliances. So this week I was in Hemel Hempstead. I've been in a school in Birmingham and in Telford with Teaching School Alliances, who they are the ones who advertise HLTA preparation, but we go in and do the preparation and do the assessment. So we're working in partnership with TSAs. And if you are an aspiring HLTA and you've looked online and can't find a programme near you, again, we're always on the lookout for Teaching School Alliances in our regions. I should stress that because I'm very conscious. We work with 4 partners now: Babcock, Babcock, London South East, University of Northampton, East Midlands, HLTA North, up the north, and we do have our own regions that we work in, and you can find that on the HNAP website. In terms of Level 5 award, we can do that in any north. And we do have our own regions that we work in, and you can find that on the HNAP website. In terms of Level 5 award, we can do that in any region in the country. But the point I'm making is that they tend now to be where Teaching School Alliances say, okay, we'd like to offer that programme in our locality, and we go and deliver. But if people are interested, we're always on the lookout to talk to Teaching School Alliances who'd be interested to put on those sorts of programmes. So there are a lot of professional development available online. If you are interested in SEN, one really good resource I'd recommend is on NASEN, NASEN. NASEN is the national organisation for special educational needs. They launched, I think it was in May 2016, so it's not been very long now, they launched what they call Focus on SEND, and it's free training resources. There are modules you can do. It's a quite detailed programme of study which can be undertaken by individuals. I'm pretty sure that it's free of charge. You don't need to be a NASEN member to do it. But you know, if that's of interest to you, SEN, there's some really good training resources that you might like to look at called Focus on SEND on the NASEN website. Because, you know, if I could say one thing which has struck me over all the years is the regional variability. You can go into some regions, some local authority areas where TA appraisal, performance management is just integral to everything they do. And you can go into another local authority region where actually most of the schools don't engage in it at all. There's still so much variability between how TAs and HLTAs are deployed, how they're paid, how they're managed, how they're appraised. It isn't, my opinion is, it isn't consistent across the country. In terms of the Level 4 certificate I mentioned, what I didn't say is it's completely online, and perhaps a bit more information about it then, rather than you looking it up. What we did is we organised it so we could give credit for you having HLTA status. So if you've got HLTA status, and particularly if you've gained HLTA in the last 12 months, you would have put together a folder of evidence if you'd been assessed through us, through HNAP. Therefore, what we do is, HLTA status is all about demonstrating evidence against 33 standards. The qualification is about you evidencing Level 4 criteria, but because there is such a crossover between the evidence for the HLTA standards and evidence for the HLTA Level 4 criteria, what you do is you go online, you scan in all of the documents that you had in your folder for HLTA status, you upload it, but you upload it against Level 4 criteria. So for 1.1.1 and 1.1.2, for 1.1.3, etc., and 2.1.1, you upload your HLTA evidence, and we give you guidance to say, well, if it's standard 3, it's likely to be linked to 2.1.2, etc. criteria. So you can upload your documents as a really good starting point. So I'd say 75 to 80% of your evidence for the Level 4 qualification will come from the documents that you collected for HLTA status. You will need 2 documents for every criterion, So when you did your HLTA assessment, you may have had 2 documents per standard, but you may have had 1. There may indeed have been some standards for which you had no documentary evidence, and that was fine. But for the criteria, you will have to top it up. So you documents per standard, but you may have had 1. There may indeed have been some standards for which you had no documentary evidence, and that was fine. But for the criteria, you will have to top it up, so you do end up with 2 documents per criteria. But exactly the same as HLTA status, you can use a document against more than 1 criteria in the same way as you could for HLTA status. But it's completely online. You pay your money, you get a login, you upload your documents against the criteria, all the guidance online, we then mark it against the criteria. If it's not enough evidence, we write back to you and say we need a bit more, and you can do that. Once you've demonstrated all the criteria, you can be awarded the Level 4 certificate for HLTAs. It's all about qualification criteria as opposed to status standards. But that huge crossover between the two means that the certificate doesn't mean starting from scratch. So there is a Worcestershire programme for HLTAs, and if any of you do want any specific information about HLTA assessment, again, first of all, the HLTA.org.uk website, which represents HNAP, is the first place to go to. We do have HLTA of the Year Award, and this is our 4th year now. So every year, for the last 3 years, we've had 9 regional winners who descend on London in November each year. And the 9 regional winners have a tour of the Houses of Parliament, and an MP comes along and does a presentation. Now again, whichever region you're in, if you are an HLTA and you would like to be nominated, talk to your school. I've been in schools where there are 6 or 7 HLTAs, and I've been in schools where there are no HLTAs at all. But in theory, a head teacher could look at the 33 standards, agree that you meet them, could print out a certificate saying congratulations, you're an HLTA, and give it to you for Best Work Assembly on a Friday and deploy you as an HLTA. Because my understanding is that head teachers can deploy people to lead whole classes if they deem them to be fit to do so. And in doing so, they should take into account professional standards. That the first year of a foundation degree is Level 4. The second year of a foundation degree is Level 5. and the third year, or the top-up year, where you get a full degree, that takes you to level 6. If you are a graduate, if you've got a full degree, you've achieved a qualification at level 6, and a foundation degree is level 4 and level 5 depending on the year. HLTA status was always pitched at level 4, and by that I mean it was always deemed to be equivalent to the first year foundation degree. And as such, in all the years I've been doing this, a number of universities and colleges across the country gave, I think they still give, depending on who they are, but a lot certainly, I'm sure some still do, and lots certainly did, they give credit for having HLTA. So it's about shopping around. If you've got HLTA status and you think the next thing for me is a foundation degree, some colleges or universities might offer 20, 30, 40 credits off the first year of a foundation degree because you've got the HLTA. And so as a practitioner, gaining HLTA status is the highest you can get. The highest status you can be awarded as a practitioner is HLTA status. But the highest qualification you can get is degree, PG cert, PG diploma, masters. So, I would encourage anyone to continually learn and to keep striving, to improve themselves along both directions. Similarly with the HLTA certificate, we know that, it's challenging times. Money is short, some TAs are being made redundant, lots of schools are in a position where TAs have to reapply for their jobs. Durham, there's a lot of upheaval at the moment with TAs, and as an individual you might think, okay, I've got the status, but then also there are thousands and thousands of other people who've got the status. What makes me stand out? So for some individuals, getting a level 4 certificate for HLTAs, the 24 credits alongside the status, might just help them to secure a job or go for another job. I've got a couple of other links that I use with my SENCOs on the National Award. Having been invited to your group page, I think what I'll do now is there's some things in my head which I could share with you over the next couple of weeks, and I'll do that. There's a few links around training on autism, ADHD, some videos perhaps, that I'll post onto your group. I think the final thing I want to say is that everything I've said, I represent Best Practice Network. That's who I'm employed by. I work with our partners at HNAP, Babcock, University of Northampton, and HLTA North. But they are our partners, or work with them. But I'm just making the point that my views and opinions are my views and opinions, and I represent Best Practice. But I don't seek to speak on behalf of my colleagues and partners, because they might have different views other than what I've expressed, but certainly from Best Practice Network's point of view and my point of view, very happy to arrange additional sessions later on.